In a world of fear, one man, 3 women, 3 other men, and no audience. Make sense of a life with no meaning. You're as mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore.
Well, thanks very much. Yes, it's been a hell of a week, hasn't it? Nearly 200,000 cases of the coronavirus worldwide. Oh, sorry. Hey, I don't think this is working.
What?
The canned laughter. It doesn't feel right. No. I think we should go without.
Is it too much? I can change it.
No, we don't want that. No, it'll be fine. Thanks. Yeah, we're done. Sorry about that. We don't have an audience this week because of the coronavirus, and Michael Rowland very kindly loaned us the machine he uses to practice the jokes he does on News Breakfast. But I don't think we need it. I can get by without an audience. I have for most of my career. And to be honest with you, there are far more serious things happening in the world at the moment than us not having a laugh track. The Grand Prix was cancelled, so now Ferrari and McLaren are going to have to sit a written test this year. Our Home Affairs Minister, Peter Dutton, who we make jokes about a lot on this show, but not tonight. He's had a terrible week. He came into contact with Ivanka Trump and presumably had to try and make conversation with her, which couldn't have been easy for him. But worst of all, we gave Tom Hanks the coronavirus. It's probably the only thing he and Peter Dutton will ever have in common. So, Tom and Rita, if you're watching, on behalf of the country, I would like to apologise to you both. It's bad enough you had to come over here to make a film with Baz Luhrmann, and that you had to do it in the Gold Coast. I mean, I had to go to the Logies up there last year, so I know what hell that can be. Though it must be said, that's mainly because it's the Logies. But on top of that, you were told you had the coronavirus. If only you'd stayed in the US. You would have had the coronavirus, but at least you wouldn't know about it because they have no testing kits over there. The good news is, though, that we heard yesterday that Tom had been released from hospital, but we don't want him getting sick again. So if you see Tom, for God's sakes, keep your distance. So to Tom and Rita and Peter and Richard Wilkins and everyone else who has it or had it and is recovering, get well soon, all of you.
Shaun? Hey, Shaun.
Excuse me. Yes, Tosh?
I was wondering if I could ask a favour because Tom Hanks is watching tonight.
Well, no, I said he might be watching tonight. I don't know. Yeah,
but if he is watching, then this could be my big break. This one's for you, Tom. Hit it, Professor. You got a friend in me.
No, Tosh, I don't think it's appropriate.
You got a friend in
Tosh,
me.
that's great, but I think Tom... Hey, I think Tom and Rita don't want the pressure if they're watching the show. They just want to sit back, relax and enjoy some Australian television.
I don't know if enjoy is the right word.
We're not doing a special show just for Tom, all right? We're making this a regular show for a regular audience. Now, go and get ready for whatever you're doing in the show later on. Sorry about that, Tom, if you're watching. It'll never happen again.
Excuse me, Shaun.
Excuse me again. Yes, Francis?
All aboard!
Is that from Polar Express?
He's my favourite Tom Hanks character. Get well, Tom.
Yes, thank you, Francis. Anyway, one final word on the coronavirus, if I may. In fact, several, in a very special plain speaking. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. One trait that is crucial in leaders in times of crisis is agility, the ability to react quickly and adapt to a rapidly changing environment. And our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has this in spades. Last week, when asked whether major sports events should be cancelled, he said it's up to event organisers to decide on the future of their events. And then the next day, he announced a 500-person mass gathering limit and said he would set the ground rules about how these events can be run. Now, I call that flexible, adaptable and open-minded, because I don't want to believe it's inconsistent, alarming and erratic. Scott also said this.
Whatever you thought 2020 was going to be about, think again.
Which is a massive relief because I thought it was going to be about the coronavirus. But it needn't be if we all follow the expert advice we're getting from the authorities. For example, cough into your elbow and then rather than spreading the disease by shaking hands, spread it by touching those infected elbows. And if you do feel unwell, should you get tested? Here's the advice from Chief Medical Officer Brendan Murphy.
At the moment, we are not recommending that general members of the community with acute respiratory symptoms, colds, flu and the like, be tested.
And here's the advice from Health Minister Greg Hunt.
If in doubt, get yourself tested.
So it's good to know the do's and don'ts, isn't it? And those that are both. We also have good advice from our Science Minister, Karen Andrews, who has reassured Australians that while the government is ramping up its response, it's not getting ahead of itself.
It's important that we don't put the horse before the cart here.
Yes, if the horse is going anywhere, it's already left, and the best thing we can do is close the gate after it's bolted. Still, when you find yourself in these sorts of conditions, governments really have no choice. As they say, when in Rome, stay there. All this advice, though, was summarised beautifully, I thought, in the PM's address to the nation, which was on all the channels last Friday. Although, given free-to-air TV viewing figures these days, he'd have been better off putting it on TikTok. Mind you, it must be hard. It must be hard to know how to pitch things these days. Do you give practical advice people can act on? Do you clear up the confusion about whether and when you should get tested or why some major events are cancelled and others aren't? Or do you make it all about yourself and list your government's achievements?
We were one of the first countries to recognise the seriousness of the coronavirus. We quickly established travel bans from the most affected countries and scaled up our screening and protection on our borders. We evacuated Australians from virus hotspots and set up quarantine facilities.
Well, we've cleared that up anyway. And I must say that I am impressed with the way the PM coordinated our response with other countries, right down to the clasped hands, exposed shirt cuffs and patriotic lapel badges. The actual policies, though, are, of course, closer to home. We steal them from New Zealand. The final word on all of this, though, should come from David Spears, the host of Insiders, about the new cleaning protocols in Parliament House.
Someone's decided that there's enough risk to send in fully clothed cleaners to scrub down the whole area.
Fully clothed cleaners? Is that an overreaction? I mean, nude cleaners have entertained countless MPs while keeping Parliament House spotless since it first opened. And aren't we supposed to carry on as normal as much as possible? Hashtag reinstate the nude cleaners. After the break, toilet rolls, do they go off after using them? And George Pell, could he still become Pope? But right now, let's forget about the global health crisis and look at how it affects us economically with Financy Boy.
Thanks, Shaun. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has been keen to point out the measures the government had taken to support businesses. Tax breaks for businesses to purchase equipment, for example, worth up to $150,000, and extending that scheme to businesses with a turnover of up to $500 million. As the Treasurer himself put it,
car dealers will have cars to be sold today, and people will go out and buy them now and write them off directly.
Presumably as they back them out of the car dealership. Well, seems like a waste of a car, but if that's what it takes to avoid a recession, back to you, Shaun.
Tosh Greenslade there in a Restoration Wigan period costume doing a character I'm surprised we don't get more complaints about, making a joke about the writing off of a car. So, there's the government now.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
No, Tosh.
When the road is rough ahead and your miles and your
hey. No. I said no. So there's the government a few short months ago staring at a $7 billion surplus. But in the blink of an eye, that we shouldn't then touch with our hands, it's gone. Treasury economist Marie Volting, it's a very dramatic turnaround.
It's very hard to deal with, Shaun. Sorry.
No, it's OK. Take your time.
You know, you work towards producing a surplus for years and years, and then you get so close. You know, you can taste it. You can smell it. You can...
Announce it.
Yes! And then some dickweed on the other side of the world eats a bat, and it's gone. It's gone. It's gone, Shaun!
I know. So, $750 cash payments to those on welfare.
I'm sorry. It's just all that pain we've endured for not increasing New Start, you know, all the money that we falsely clawed back via robo-debt, and now we're just giving it back to them. We're just handing it over to them, Shaun.
I know.
I don't know how I'm supposed to carry on.
Well, don't give up. I mean, if you believe in yourself, you can get your surplus one day.
But where will we get the money from?
Probably the ABC budget.
Yeah, thank you, Shaun. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. But this present from the government also comes with instructions from our Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, which read, spend up on your priorities, spend up on what matters to you, just as the government did with the sports grant funds. But in your case, go and spend up, whether it's illicit drugs, black market tobacco, poker machines, cockfighting, pornography, or in the case of aged pensioners, Michael Bublé albums. For God's sakes, open your wallets, you tight asses. But the government can't do it all. In fact, it struggles with substantially smaller quantities. So the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, seen here covering his body in Zavarex on the weekend when he was considering going to either the NRL or the Hillsong Conference, has asked for help from the sector that we know always has their heart in the right place, business.
We need you to support your workers by keeping them employed.
And paying them too, if you don't mind, because honestly, the amounts of money some staff have been denied, like this.
Qantas boss Alan Joyce is taking a $6 million pay cut.
Outrageous, isn't it? How is that man supposed to survive on $18 million a year? Send your entries to, I don't know, and I'm willing to try, etc., and you could win a set of Jeremy, His and Hernandez towels valued at under $10. Anyway, you cut it though, the surplus is gone. Darius Horsham, the Liberal Party's back in black mugs have been removed from your online store and presumably replaced with ones that say running on empty.
Shaun, the back in black mugs were like the ones with World's Greatest Dad or Female Body Inspector or I Love Adelaide. They're not meant to be taken literally.
Well, if that's the case, then why get rid of them just because there's no surplus?
I agree with you totally. In fact, at $35 each, Australians would only need to buy 430 million of them, just 17 mugs per person, to stimulate the economy to about 1% of GDP. Avoid the looming recession, and perhaps even create a surplus, in which case we could put them back in our online store and sell them again because they would be correct. And who knows, perhaps the coronavirus means we could sell the idea of single-use mugs, which means we would do even better than we was before.
I'll ask you this. Do you think the message from the government thus far has been responsible?
Say what now?
Well, last Friday, the PM was talking about blanket bans on large events, claiming it was a matter for event organisers.
Well, Shaun, last week was like any worldwide emergency, like a war or climate change. You let the market decide. The last thing we need is big government making decisions about public safety.
But don't you think that was irresponsible? Even after the ban, which kicked in after the weekend for some reason, the PM vowed he'd attend an NRL match that weekend. And your own minister, Matthias Cormann, said he was quite happy to go to the Grand Prix.
Matthias meant if the crowds ended up being banned and he was the only one there.
Yeah, but I don't understand.
What do you want from us anyway? 2020 foresight? Consistency in our advice? Pop-up testing facilities earlier than a month from now when it'll be too late? This is unprecedented shit we are talking about here. We don't know what the hell we are doing. We are used to little things like our economy and encouraging wage growth without increasing take-home pay and growing jobs by making out someone who works an hour a week is employed and the colour of the car fleet. Grey! We're not good at fires and plagues and Paris targets and our impending doom.
Well, thank you very much, Darius.
Fantastic.
After the break...
Oh, Shaun, before I go, I've got a little something for the Tom Hanks, if he's watching.
Oh. Well, Yeah, Darius, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Son of a bitch.
Why, Jai Courtney, I would be delighted to stay for lunch. Oh, this old thing. It's just my police hat.
You wanted to see us, Chief?
Curiosity. We're reopening the Immigration Detention Centre. ABC TV want to use it as a location for their new show set in an immigration detention centre. Of course, we'll have to do it up, make it look nice.
Why not just show it like it is? Cruel and inhuman and uncompromisingly real.
Because Kate Blanchett is in the cast, and I'm not having her get dust and cobwebs all over her lovely outfits. Now get to work.
You know, when I was on holiday in New Zealand and they were making Lord of the Rings, I broke into Kate Blanchett's trailer and stole her ears. She had to wear the fake one she was using for the movie Home for the weekend.
You
Yvonne Strahovski's agent wants extras she can complain to the producers about for making eye contact with her in the catering tent. No experience necessary.
What's this I hear about you giving Kate Blanchett a rat-infested caravan to use on location as a dressing salon?
It was my fault, Chief. I was led astray by the promise of riches and fame that come with a career in Australian television.
When I was intimacy consultant on Letters and Numbers, it was all about exchanging sexual favours for career advancement. I started at the bottom.
Curiosity cul-de-sac. I'm telling you, I know where it's at.
Welcome back, and with a brief glance at what our contestants will be up against in the final round, here's Stephen.
That's exactly right, Shaun. Jill and Pogo, the gorilla she hopes she'll be compatible with insofar as brain tissue is concerned, have signed their release forms, had their anaesthetic, and just learned that their celebrity neurosurgeon is Dr. Charlie Teo. Jill, you must be worried about the expense.
Well, that's what crowdfunding is for, Stephen. I just hope that Pogo and I and all the contestants on Dr. Moreau's Lust Atoll are happy in each other's bodies.
Back to you, Shaun.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, on top of the coronavirus last week, we've also been dealing with tall poppy syndrome. The latest to test positive for this is National Careers Ambassador Scott Cam, coming under attack for being paid $140,000 so far by the government for just a handful of posts, something he'd normally make a good fence out of. But Scott came out last week defending himself and his fee as money well spent.
I've done 10, 12 interviews about the fact that I've been paid already, so that's bringing a national identity to our cause of what we're doing.
Brilliant. The very stink about him not being value for money has made him value for money. And what's more,
I think it's only fair that I get paid like you get paid.
Well, if he was getting paid like that journalist was getting paid, there wouldn't be an issue. But if journalists are being paid like Scott's getting paid, then I say, yeah, let's get the AFP to raid the lot of them. That, though, was Scott's first public appearance in his ambassadorial role since his appointment, and you can see why he hasn't needed to be at any when the interviews run like this.
To be able to work with Scott Cam, who's worked with Scott, you've worked with governments across the board, haven't you, for many, many years now. Why have governments chosen to work with you? Because of what you represent. You are a draw card.
Much better at answering their own questions than ours, aren't they? Coming up after the break, the Queensland Health Minister unveils his state's new tourism motto.
If you are going to get COVID-19 anywhere in the world, Queensland is where you would want to get it.
And also,
in a world first for time-poor women, the contraceptive pill can now be home delivered.
And apparently if it's not on time, it's free. Oh, thought it was real for a moment. In breaking news, an arrest has finally been made in the case of the Bayside bomber after a campaign of terror lasting more than a decade. In this exclusive report, Simonella Bark is speaking to a neighbour of the arrested man, Tony Bungay. Simonella.
That's exactly right, Shaun. Tony, like most neighbours, you probably didn't notice anything unusual. In fact, to you, I suppose, he was a regular family man and you can't believe all of this was going on right next door to you.
Not really. If I were to describe him, I would have said he's a classic lone wolf bombing type. As soon as we heard about these attacks on the news a few years back, I said to the wife, I said, oh, yeah, that's probably him.
Well, that in itself is unusual. Normally we hear that the neighbours didn't suspect a thing.
Oh, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? They're hardly going to say we knew all along, but we're too gutless to speak up and the blood of the victims is on our hands. But the fact of the matter is, I always suspected him from the moment he moved in. I said to the wife, I said, looks like a bomber's moved in next door again.
How did it take him so long to be caught, do you think?
Well, I guess you'd have to put that down to weakness of character. It's an indictment on every one of us and a sad reflection of the Australian psyche. If anything, I, the wife and the entire street are just as guilty as the killer himself, if not more so.
And just out of interest, how did you know he was a bomber?
Takes one to know one, I always say.
The fuck?
Oh, yeah, he was always coming over and borrowing parts for explosive devices he was making, a timer, some fuse wire, a bit of C3, or else he was going through the bins for the wife's magazines so he could cut out the letters and use them in notes to taunt the police with.
Okay, but I thought...
Where he really went unstuck, though, was when I rang the authorities on a burner phone using a voice distortion device and dobbed him in for crimes that I'd actually committed. Were it not for the fact that I foolishly gave myself away with this interview, he'd be spending the rest of his days rotting away in prison, and good riddance to him.
There he is.
Back to you, Shaun.
Well, now that it increasingly looks like we won't be having sporting events in this country, it looks even more short-sighted that the government rorted all that money for sporting facilities. For more breaking opinions as they occur to me, it's time for our Resports Port. Well, we're joined by ex-Sports Minister Bridget McKenzie's ex-Chief of Staff, Megan St John. Megan, constitutional law experts have warned Bridget that if she had no legal authority to hand out the grants, then ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yeah, well, Bridget didn't know that, Shaun, so...
Well, I don't think being ignorant of the fact that ignorance of the law is no excuse is an excuse either.
Well, Bridget didn't know that either, so...
Yeah, well, not knowing stuff you should know doesn't get you out of the consequences, does it? Only maybe stuff that you didn't know that you couldn't have known.
Like those last-minute changes to the sports grants.
Yeah, but plausible deniability has to be plausible, though, doesn't it?
Does it? I didn't know that, and neither did Bridget.
Look, for example, Bridget couldn't say that she didn't know she had to declare her membership in the gun club to get out of resigning. That would only work if she was a member and didn't know it, like when Gladys Liu was a member of the organisation linked to China's foreign interference operations without her knowledge or consent.
What? Who was that lady?
Gladys Liu, the Liberal member for Chisholm.
I've never heard of it, and neither has Bridget.
Well, nonetheless...
Look, Shaun, all I know is that if you're trying to get Bridget on a question of legal whatever, you're sending your rabbit down the wrong hole. Bridget doesn't know stuff. She does stuff. She doesn't need to know if she could do something after she's already done that something, because she already did it. So she must have could have done it because it's done.
Well, hang on a minute.
And you can't stop a bullet hitting a rabbit after you've fired the gun any more than you can stop a backdated email from going out after someone else sends it. That's physics. There's no point your husband telling you the rabbit was a present for your 7-year-old because it's too late. The rabbit's dead. The money's gone, the minister's resigned, the kid's crying. Best you just tell him he might get another rabbit next birthday and hide the gun under the bed until it all blows over. Then you give the gun back its old job later when it's all forgotten. The past is gone. The future is alive and it's scared. Running. And you can smell the blood and the sweat. Wait, where'd you go?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, God, sorry. You're bloody hard to see when you stop moving.
Yeah. Coming up, once all the panic and hysteria about the coronavirus is over and we have a vaccine, will it cause autism? And with a ban on crowds of over 100, jazz fusion group Spyrogyra's Australian tour set to go ahead. When we were disinfecting the studio after Monday night's Q&A, we found a bunch of unanswered question cards in Hamish McDonald's biosecurity bin, and we thought we'd use them for our own Mad As debate.
Mad As debate.
Now, tonight's topic is self-isolation, and my guests tonight are not here, of course, typical. A question from the audience about this comment from Industrial Relations Minister Christian Porter when he was asked how casual workers would cope if asked to self-quarantine.
Many people would have already made provisions for that because, of course, the purpose of casual employment is that you're paid extra in lieu of those types of entitlements.
So the government couldn't have foreseen how the coronavirus would affect their budget, but Chad JB Hi-Fi would have, and he would have put aside a little extra from his pay to, say, last 3 to 6 months without work.
Excuse me, Shaun?
Yes, hello, businessman in the suit there.
Is the hat all right? Not a bit much?
No, the hat's good. I like the hat.
Yeah. OK, Shaun, I'm a little worried that the Industrial Relations Minister, Christian Porter, doesn't seem to understand the purpose of casual employment.
Well, isn't it like he said, people get paid a little more in lieu of sick leave and annual leave?
Don't be ridiculous, Shaun. Its purpose is to allow businesses like mine to reclassify employees who are, for all intents and purposes, permanent or part-time, as casuals. That way, we can avoid paying them any kind of leave entitlement, which we actually can afford to pay. We limit their ability to bargain for higher wages, because who wants that? And it gives us the opportunity to terminate their employment at a moment's notice because maybe we don't like the way their tuna melt stinks up the lunchroom.
Well, I suppose they do get a little more money.
There are some downsides to it, of course, yes. Yeah.
Well, panic buying, the Chief Medical Officer...
Hey, Shaun! How's it hanging? I'm David Pumpkins. Any questions?
Just one. Emily, what on earth are you doing?
Oh, it was a character Tom Hanks did. You know, he did it once on Saturday Night Live about 4 years ago.
No.
OK. Cool.
Panic buying. The Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy, has offered this advice.
For most people, I think we don't want to encourage major panic buying at the moment.
At some point, then, presumably the government will encourage major panic buying. Deputy Chief Medical Officer, intern, Liam O'Malley.
Certainly, but the important thing with the panicking is that we don't want to rush into it. We want all Australians to wait until we can declare a state of national panic and we can have an ordered, timely descent into chaos. I refer you to the panic buying pyramid. And we are currently only on brown alert, toilet paper and pasta. At the appropriate time, we will raise the panic level to batteries and beans, then candles and twine, then knives and guns, until we eventually recommend people start stockpiling man flesh and rocks.
Yes, but we're not there yet.
Not for most people, no.
As they reach adulthood, these meerkats face a choice: to remain in the colony where they will live out their lives being cute, or enter the online price comparison industry where they may be attacked for allegedly breaking competition law and artificially inflating prices for home insurance.
That's Shaun Micallef's slightly racist insurance industry spokesmodels of the Kalahari. Thursdays at 9:17 p.m, just after one of those ads about why everyone fucking loves the ABC.
Never really thought about it before.
Habit, mainly?
It's just sort of on.
Welcome back. Well, hands up who watched the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison's address to the nation last week. Everybody, that's great. It's a bit hard to miss, wasn't it? I mean, we all tried, but it was on every channel. Like when Inspector Dreyfus went insane in the Pink Panther strikes again and threatened to vaporise the UN building with the Doomsday Machine. And I've got to say it was a pretty impressive performance. Unlike Inspector Dreyfus, there was no mad eye-twitching or organ playing. Scott was cool, calm and collected, very much the man in control. Strong image, a lot of books in the background, as you can see there, suggesting he's someone who can read. And no work on the desk, suggesting he's put everything on a hold until this problem is solved. He's in charge and no microscopic organism is going to make Anthony Albanese preferred Prime Minister. Of course, these sorts of messages don't happen by accident. In fact, I think we have a tape of the rehearsal of the address, which I think we can show you now, can we? Yes, we can.
Good evening, Australia. Tonight, I want to talk to you about the global coronavirus. What it means for you and your family.
Glorious Sri Lankan curry, Mr. M. Absolutely glorious.
Australia through.
You must give my wife
This
another
virus
recipe.
began in China and has
Scott
now
got it
reached
from that
some
lovely Billawheeler couple on
114
Christmas
countries.
Island.
Oh, that's
More than
interesting.
You're on in 5, Mr.
4,000
ScoMo.
people have
Shall I clear the
contracted
dishes?
the virus.
Don't bother him
including
while he's rehearsing
140
Colgrave. We can do
Australia.
it, can't we?
Yeah, no worries,
Medical
Mrs. M.
experts tell us that for most Australians in good health who contract the virus, they will experience a mild illness. That said, this virus is also highly transmissible.
Well, not coming up because you can't ask that is on in a minute. Annual Festival of OH&S violations gets underway in Brisbane. And athlete gets first look at the main stadium athletics track for the 2020 Tokyo Quarantine Olympics. And finally, we live in anxious times. As Westpac's chief economist Bill Evans says, having a stockpile of toilet paper is one thing, knowing how to use it is quite another.
It's just this huge degree of uncertainty. We don't know where the bottom is.
Goodbye.
Giant baby.